The phone conversation between fantasy veterans Bob Harris and Matt Waldman is a quick and dirty rundown of players, units, or teams from Sunday's games. Feel it or fuck it is our instant verdict on the fantasy value of a player or situation, not the ability, effort, or character of the player. This is just how two old-timers in this industry talk when they got a lot to cover in a little time.
Oh, Matt Waldman, the scouting combine is ongoing. News is moving at a breakneck pace. We've got a lot going on here today. Monday in general, feel it or fuck it.
Feeling it today because there's no actual football from Sunday, so I'm always feeling it after that, just, at this time of year. How about you?
I'm definitely feeling it. Fresh off the vacation to a fast-moving start, and let's dive into it because we have a little news. I was told free agency started next week, but I left out some of the pieces. Like Derek Carr is already available, Matt. Sounds like he's got a deal done essentially with the Saints. He kind of confirmed it on Twitter with a little who dat tweet. Derek Carr is a Saint. Feel it or fuck it.
I'm definitely feeling that because I think that he gives you really the best potential stopgap option that you at worst, and a quality Ryan Tannehill-esque type of addition who can maybe give you another 3 or 4 years and help you be a playoff contender in what I would say is a weak division as it stands right now in the NFC South. It could get quite stronger within, the coming weeks, but I think that the Saints with Derek Carr have an inside track to return to prominence.
Yeah, they suddenly have the best quarterback in the division, right? Well, they're the only team with a quarterback in the division. Let's rephrase that. The Panthers.
Kyle Trask?
I don't know. You would know more about him than I do because I ain't seen nothing of that.
Fuck it.
So I kind of agree with this. I think, Derek Carr, the thing I've said about Carr, and I believe this, is he's a really good quarterback. He's not a great quarterback.
Yep.
In the NFL, there are not a lot of great quarterbacks, and there's not a lot of really good quarterbacks. And so I think, we've seen him recently drive the fantasy value of various assets. Devontae Adams most recently. Hunter Renfrow has had some great seasons. Derek Carr. Darren Waller's had some great seasons. My bigger concern in New Orleans is going to be the supporting cast, and we'll talk about one of them in a minute, but we've got questions about Alvin Kamara's immediate future with this club. He'll go on trial July 31st on assault charges. I think these are serious charges and are going to cost him some time. So there'll be questions at running back. There are questions at wide receiver. Chris Olave is an ascending talent, but beyond that, Michael Thomas, we don't know a lot about him. I think there's some other promising pieces there, but not a lot of proven commodities. So I'm kind of feeling this as well, but I have concerns. So that brings me to Chris Olave. Does he have wide receiver one upside with Derek Carr quarterback?
Fuck yes, he does. I'm feeling that. That's a terrific pairing because Carr has worked with so many varieties of players from Amari Cooper to Michael Crabtree, and then you have guys like Devontae Adams and Renfrow and Waller. So he's worked with guys that who have all been very good route runners in this league. Carr's a terrific play action passer. So getting the running back situation straight will be fine. I mean, I could see them drafting a running back and feeling pretty good about it, or taking a shot on a free agent who will be a holdover stopgap for, based on what they think of what they want to gamble about with Kamara's future. So that's all fine. But Olave, really low-key metrics-wise, if you just want to look from the metrics, low-key was really still one of the best receivers of the rookie class, even when their quarterback situation got kind of off kilter. But when you put him with a quarterback the caliber of Carr, who makes good reads, who, if you give him a lot of information pre-snap to make decisions, he and Olave are going to turn out to be very good. And here's the thing. Saints' offensive line hasn't been good as it used to be, but at the same time, when has the Raiders' offensive line been great? It really has had a lot of holes, and Derek Carr's played well through a lot of those holes. So it's not like he's entering a situation he's not used to from that perspective. I think that it's going to be a fine matchup, and we should see Olave have a real strong shot at top 15 production this year.
And yes, Rashid Shaheed, the truthers, I know you're out there.
Yes,
You
they
wait.
are.
It's going to get
Kind of
better.
feeling it.
Kind of feeling it. Boy, there's a lot going on here. So we'll just touch base on these breaking news stories that come. Michael Silver writing for Bally Sports, so get used to the gambling world
What?
getting more involved, intersecting more with the NFL world. That's coming, people. Wait till one of these places
What?
hire Schefter away. Anyway,
When does
so
Circus start hiring people? Hold on,
pretty
wait.
soon.
Okay.
I've applied. I'm
Okay.
the clown.
Red nose.
So the reporting is from Silver that the Titans are shopping Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is a desirable trade asset. Feel it or fuck it.
Overall, fuck it, but only because he's an aging player. How depends on what the contract really has to tell you. If they can get really, it's more of like they're paying the back end of a short-term deal, and you're a good team that really needs a running back to make yourselves a strong contender and kind of tie the room together, then I'm feeling that. But I don't know if there are a lot of teams that are going to say, hey, yes, we could have a top running back right here, but do we have the line that's going to support what he does best? And how long are we really going to have him? And couldn't we get one of these good rookie running backs that are coming out for a lot cheaper for about 3 to 4 years, and maybe franchise tag the guy, so maybe get him for 5, and then we can move on to the next guy. So I think a lot of teams think that way, and so I would say as a player, I'm still feeling him. As a deal in a trade, fuck that.
Agree. I think a team would have to say we are a Derrick Henry away from a championship. I don't think any team thinks they're a running back away from anything. Right, just the way we've seen things going. That said, quarterbacks are a different story. Many teams covet these players. You'll be surprised to learn, Matt Waldman. I mentioned earlier, some are good, a few great ones.
Somebody in my house did a podcast on some last night. I don't know who it was, but he left a mess in this office.
Might have been you. So that being the case, Lamar Jackson doesn't sound like the long-term deal is going to be done. The deadline is Tuesday. We're recording this on Monday. Deadline's Tuesday. So exclusive or non-exclusive tag is the next question. The recent reporting for Lamar Jackson is the non-exclusive tag. If that's the case, teams being willing to give up 2 first-round picks and paying Lamar Jackson, feel it or fuck it.
Fuck it, based on those teams. I love Lamar Jackson's game. I think he still gets kind of clowned on by a lot of people who may not understand the nuances of the game. But he is... I think teams are going to be part of those that kind of clown him a bit, and I'll just look at it and say, some of them didn't think he was a quarterback prospect because I think they spend more time looking at box score stats than actual charting quarterback games and understanding that his accuracy is pretty darn good. And I know that our buddy Dwayne McFarland has recently done some things on Lamar Jackson to talk about that. But at the same time, when we look at quality of receivers, we do have to understand that there is a different quality. I would disagree with him about just saying, "Oh, Marquise Brown, they had quality of receivers." No, I would say they've had it's been kind of mistimed in terms of the quality of talent. And I agree with Rashad Bateman. He is a quality player, and he is going to get a chance to prove his value if he can stay healthy this next year. He's been able to do that for most of his career. So anyway, Lamar Jackson, to me, teams are going to feel like they're going to have to restructure their offense. And at this stage of the year where they're trying to do some planning, I don't know how many teams are going to feel like, yeah, let's bring in Lamar Jackson. We didn't anticipate that we were going to sign him, and now let's revamp our offense, especially if you have a current offensive coordinator who's entrenched with that team, who might not be as agreeable about those things. So I think the best bet is Lamar Jackson ends up staying as a Raven. They make this thing work out well, and I think that they can do that with Monken. It is Todd Monken that's going to be there. So we talked about him a week ago or a couple weeks ago. I still think that can be a good fit. I think that's where he's going to wind up. So yeah, fuck the idea of trading 2 first-round picks and then all the rearranging they got to do.
Right, I think that's a big deal. Although I do paraphrase Lamar, he throws pretty good for a running back, and I would agree with that assessment there by the great scouting mind of Lamar Jackson. Daniel Jones sounds like there's some optimism a deal will be done. That said, the deal is well. Importantly, the desire is $45 million a year. I know you do not like Daniel Jones as much as me. I'm guessing you say fuck it to that $45 million a year.
I just say fuck it to the question about salaries, because the way I look at it is every year that people pay a quarterback on a second contract a big salary, it's like, oh, they all have the heart attack about it, but then in coming years it turns out to be like a mid-level deal, and I think that's what's going to happen with Daniel Jones. I'm okay with that. He did play better. He's this is where he needs to stay. And if he went to New Orleans, I would say that would have been a potential for disaster, just mainly because there's a whole new reacquaintance process. And I think that Dable has done a good job of figuring out what Jones does well, how to help Jones get better. And this is where he needs to stay so that maybe he can become a Kerry Collins-esque, Eli Manning-esque type of player who started off kind of like
he said derisively.
Yeah, I do. Kind of like, I saw, if you saw Bob in this, it looked like he got smelling salts when I said those two names. And that's kind of the deal, is like they had smelling salts and it revived them to be able to go on and have a decent career. And I think Daniel Jones maybe didn't need the strong bottle of smelling salts I saw on Joe Rogan's podcast, several weeks ago. But he may need a quick little whip from a weaker bottle that's been out in the air a bit.
So I think it's interesting that the Giants could play tag with him for the next 3 years and come out cheaper than the $45 million a year. So, but they need that tag because they want to keep Saquon Barkley, and so they will be desirous of a long-term deal. So we'll see if it happens. I don't know what it'll be. I don't really care how much he makes. I'm just happy that it's here to be a thorn in Matt Waldman's side. All right, so getting on with the Saquon Barkley portion of that issue. Saquon Barkley remaining a Giant. Feel it or fuck it?
I feel it. I mean, I think this is again one of those situations where teams might find Barkley a little more appealing than Derrick Henry, though I think that's not necessarily a great viewpoint, because I would probably rather have Derrick Henry if the deal was well for a year on the right team than Barkley, who I worry a little bit more about with injury. And while Barkley certainly has equal upside to Derrick Henry, I think Henry's a little more underrated when people think Barkley, because he's so flashy. People fall in love with that flash, but I think he'll remain a Giant. They're going to keep the band together one more year, see if they can get a little bit better work in the trenches and with that defense, and see if they can make a playoff run.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I thought Barkley rebounded nicely last year, better than I expected. Showed a little bit of the old explosiveness at times. Also wore down at times, and I got a little beat up. But I think he's still a pretty solid running back. I don't think he's going to get his desired salary. I think he's wanting north of $12 million a year. Sorry, that's not going to happen. Speaking of $12 million a year, I think that's about what Joe Mixon is worth this season. Jay Morrison at The Athletic recently reported that he could be a cap casualty. So I'll put it to you, Matt Waldman. Joe Mixon, a Bengal in 2023. Feel it or fuck it.
Well, I don't know all about the off-field stuff and what happened recently, and we don't know all the details, most likely, of how that's going to go and what goes from there. But we do understand that he's had this is a second issue related to violence, and I think violence against women. So, when you look at it pragmatically, not how I feel about it, but just pragmatically in today's society, that it's most likely that they're going to find a way to get rid of him and get out from under him, and especially at a position that tends to be pretty replaceable, and there's good talent on the board here. So I'm saying fuck it. He's probably going to be out on the street somewhere.
I think he is, and I agree with you. I think he is, and there are some teams I think that he'll be a reasonable enough price that if you're not having to trade for these running backs, you can sign him as free agents. And once they come to grips with what their value is, I mean, this is a hard thing for running backs, right? They are like not highly valued, and I'm sure they value themselves differently. So I think as players come to grip with what the salaries are, we'll see that adjustment made. I'm not saying it's right, wrong. I'm not into, it is what it is. They're valued as how they're valued. So we'll see about Mixon. I do think there would be suitors for him. Maybe more interest in him than there would be in Derrick Henry, since you're not having to trade for him. Ezekiel Elliott, I don't know how much interest there would be in him. I'm wondering how much interest there is in the Cowboys. They could save some money as well by moving on from him. I think that number, they'd save almost $5 billion by releasing him. $10 million if they designate him as a post-June 1 cut. Tony Pollard going to get the tag if they can't get the long-term deal done by Tuesday afternoon. Ezekiel Elliott, a Cowboy in 2023, field or fuck it.
I'm going to say fuck it. Even though Jared loves him some Ezekiel Elliott, and I love Ezekiel Elliott's game. I think I'm still one of those lone holdouts who thinks he's a fine running back. And while yes, people love to argue the contract, well, he's not worth the contract. Well, most of you don't know what a running back is worth in terms of just valuing their skill. So I'm not even going to touch your takes on what he's worth in terms of money. I just know that he's still a good running back. May not have great explosion that he once had. It may be a little bit off, but I think he's going to be a good addition somewhere, and a surprisingly good starter for another team if he lands on a team. Like, to me, if the Saints need another back for maybe a cheaper option to hold over for Kamara, which they will. Elliott could be a really good fit there. I could say we could even see where Cincinnati says, you know what, we don't want to trade for anybody, but we think we could get a good year out of Ezekiel Elliott with our line and our surrounding talent. That you could see Elliott being that guy there as well, and then they maybe draft a young guy behind Elliott. That to me would be a good option. So yeah, I'm feeling him going somewhere else and actually being pretty good, but I don't feel him staying in Dallas just because your people, man. Now they're your people. Your people are kind of crazy about football, and they start doing some weird things. Like, here it's a religion in Georgia. There it's kind of more like a mafia-esque type of thing. So I'm waiting for threats and crazy things. Let's hope not, but just dumb stuff. Like they'll walk up to you in this in your town and start like telling you about what you should be doing and how you should be doing it, even though they played like 2.5 weeks of high school football, had testicular torsion and decided to leave the game, and but they still somehow have the balls to be able to go up to a Pro Bowl caliber running back and tell him how he should play his game.
My dog groomer, Fluff Daddy, would agree with you there. Because I've heard him tell me. So I'm going to say I feel Ezekiel remaining a Cowboy on the slight cheap. I think there will be loyalties going both ways, and he might give them a little bit of a deal, but he'll have to remain there. More exciting reporting this morning. Tom Pelissero at NFL Network saying Allen Robinson, the Rams have informed his agent that he can now seek trade offers. So Allen Robinson rebooting his career with a new team. Feel it or fuck it.
Yeah. I mean, I still think that he can be a quality player. I just don't know if that's his desire. The Rams, to me, were a good opportunity, and to me, if you couldn't emerge in that offense, yes, with the quarterback play the way it was as an obstacle, but if you couldn't emerge to get the targets that you should have been able to get with Cooper Kupp out for much of the year, what's going on there? Because he should have easily been able to take over. Now, that said, maybe Sean McVay deserves a little more criticism than he gets with his ideas. He seems to be a little ego-driven and ego-attached with certain things, to the point that, we saw it with Todd Gurley for years, where they're running him into fronts that high school teams have figured out for years how to stop wide zone, and he couldn't seem to figure out how to alter course until 9 games into the season. He came into the to the Super Bowl matchup with Bill Belichick basically with a one of those guns with a string and a suction cup on it, and thought that was going to work against Bill Belichick, but then decided to blame Jared Goff, who had a Pro Bowl season this year, for a Lions team that didn't have as much talent, I would argue, as what's the Rams did maybe at the time, that they were feeling like, oh, well, we need to move on from him. So something tells me that there's there's potential for more to this story, but I'll still say fuck it, because at this point I think he's probably a little worn down with the machinery that the NFL, game is about on and off the field.
So Matt Waldman, fuck it to both Allen Robinson and Sean McVay. I'm on board with that as well. So I'm looking at this free agent draft class, or free agent class at wide receiver, Matt, and I see names like Juju Smith-Schuster, DJ Chark, Allen Lazard. Odell Beckham is on that list as well, but Jakobi Meyers is. So I frame it like this: Jakobi Meyers, the top option in a shallow free agent group at wideout. Feel it or fuck it.
I can feel it. Yeah, I can feel it. Mainly because he is a reliable pass catcher. He's a super smart wide receiver who understands how to adjust routes. He's a former quarterback, so he really does understand the game well, and he executes at a high level, despite the fact that he doesn't have that high-level free agent athletic ability. So, but I can see him being that sneaky good player. Maybe not a Robert Woods type of player, because Robert Woods had a high level of athletic ability. But on the right fit, he could be that player. But I would still say DJ Chark is someone that I would probably be considering a little bit more than Jakobi Meyers, just simply because I think he's a very good pass catcher.
Also speed.
Speed.
I'm with you. I kind of feel Jakobi. Just given the dearth of overall high-end talent, I think Myers would be a really serviceable player for the right team. And also, he scored touchdowns last year. It was great. He could be a thing. So moving on to Beckham then. Odell Beckham, still a viable frontline NFL receiver.
Yeah, I'm feeling that. If the knee, I'll put it this way. Odds are that the knee's bad enough to say fuck it. Okay. But if the knee is good, I am totally feeling it, because he still is an excellent route runner. He's still one of the best route runners in the league. You have wide receivers. I know we have our thing about Steve Smith, but as a big Steve Smith wonk, I'll say that, if Steve Smith is going to say this year, yes, Odell Beckham would still be an elite wide receiver in this league as long as the knee's good. I totally agree with that. And from what I've seen, that's the case. It's just, overall, if you're being a pragmatist from a fantasy perspective, you're going to want the answer to be fuck it until you see proof otherwise, because at the end of the day, has he been available? And the answer has probably been no. But I saw enough of Odell Beckham in Cleveland 2 years ago to tell you for years that you just say fuck it with Baker Mayfield. Somebody please get Odell Beckham a quarterback, and that's kind of where we're at.
A personal fielder, fuck it. Steve Smith is to NFL wide receivers what David Carr is to Derek Carr. Yes, an unabashed cheerleader who is a crazed shill who will say nothing but kind things about his contemporaries. There you have it. So I'm told.
Fuck that.
I'm told you know something about rookies, and the sources are my eyes, because every year I read the rookie scouting portfolio. Is that available soon, Matt?
It is April 1st for the 18th year at mattwaldman.com. You should go there and pre-order it for $21.95, because you're going to pre-draft,
post-draft. Is it full price now?
That's full price, yeah. So now you can definitely go get it. Yeah, absolutely. You crazies, I appreciate you.
So, it's rookie scouting portfolio and the rookie scouting combine. We'll combine those together and do all those things. So, we just had the combine. It was very exciting. The underwear looks great. It's a new brand of underwear, I'm told. So that was fantastic. Generally speaking, Matt, players changing minds with combine performances. Feel it or fuck it?
I'm feeling it if you're very selective about how that works. And I think that generally what that is usually if they're a small school player, or if you had doubts about their physicality or injury in a certain respect, something that maybe either the scheme disguised or that it was hard to see on film. So a guy like Stetson Bennett, who's a 5'11", 190-ish pound quarterback, out of the University of Georgia. To me, you may think of him and think of something like, if you're an older fan of teams like the Alabama teams and the Miami teams with Ken Dorsey, Gino Torretta, Craig Erickson, A.J. McCarron, you think of, marginally athletic player with just slightly not quite good enough arm who was part of national championship contending teams, and he had great surrounding talent. So maybe he's not all that good, but I think you watch Stetson Bennett throw the ball around the yard, and and you see the quickness, because he always looked quick on tape, but then you read that basically his 20 shuttle was better than just about every wide receiver who ran at the combine in this draft class, and you go, this guy's got the quickness of a slot receiver. He's got a quality NFL arm, and his tape looks good. Maybe we do consider him. Those are those cases. But, more than anything, this is really validation or of what you've already seen on film, or makes you go back and look at some smaller details. The fact that, maybe a quarterback threw a high velocity, but his tape sucked, shouldn't change your mind about him. It needs to be tape good, workout good, and you need to be able to find, and maybe you might need to take a second look to make sure that you understood why the tape was good or why it wasn't good.
So more specifically then, Anthony Richardson, he had a really good combine, it appears. At least the things like the vertical jumps and the running of the 40 yards and the broad jumps and things like that. Did he change any minds with any of that?
He probably did, but not the minds that should matter, because the minds that should matter are the ones that actually charted his games and understand that completion percentage is really not an accurate way of judging quarterback accuracy. And that's something that I talk about in my podcast that you can find today, that came out earlier this morning, about looking at Baker Mayfield as a good example of a guy with a high completion percentage, but poor charted accuracy, and Lamar Jackson with a low completion percentage and high charted accuracy. Or again, Baker Mayfield esque player Zach Wilson in the same respect there. Anthony Richardson fits in that Lamar Jackson territory in terms of, if you actually chart his games and then you take throws that are just it's very reasonable to say they were pinpoint accurate and the receiver didn't perform his task, his completion percentage would have been much higher than what you're seeing in the box score. And, certainly I look at him and, I won't go too far into it, but let's just say that we'll say it this way. Bob, if you and I were both learning Vietnamese, okay, and we decided that we were going to be sent to Ho Chi Minh City, and we both learned it at the same time, but you've been in Ho Chi Minh City for 2 to 4 years. I just went last year. Okay, now you're probably going to know all the different little cons that the street artists might have there that you don't want to give up your money to. You might know more about the culture, all those things. But let's just say you're the average, exchange student from America, and you're, you need to have things repeated to you a couple of times so that you understand it, that you need to ask them to speak slower, all those things, but you know your way around. In contrast to me, maybe I'm a little bit more gifted, but I'm raw in the extent that I may get tricked by things because I don't understand the culture of Vietnam. You've been there for 2 to 4 years. I've been there for 1 year. But at the same time, I seem to pick up on them. I can speak at the same pace as a native in Vietnam. I can listen at a fast pace, and I can even multitask while I'm listening to that language at a high pace, and actually pick up on sarcasm, wit, humor, emotion, and convey that kind of emotion. Well, I might be raw because I might get tricked by somebody because I don't understand the culture, but I'm probably more likely to have impactful relationships with people who don't speak English. So, Anthony Richardson to me is more like the guy who's been to Ho Chi Minh City for a year, but can operate at a high level, but just doesn't understand the culture yet. And I think a lot of people look at him as Malik Willis, who basically might have been there for a few years, but you have to ask them to give you the Google translator so that they can have conversations. They're two very different types of raw. So yes, you should have your mind changed by Anthony Richardson, and if you don't, well, all the better for me and everybody else who reads the rookie scouting portfolio. That's all I have to say.
All right, then. Bijan Robinson, I've heard, is a generational talent. Is he a top 10 NFL draft pick?
I don't know. I'm going to say, for the sake of this, I'm going to say I feel it, because I do think he's a very good running back, and he's a good pass catcher. He checks all the boxes of being a potential Pro Bowl caliber running back. Would I say he's on the tier of Todd Gurley and Ezekiel Elliott early in his career, and Nick Chubb? I think he's close, but not quite there.
Fair enough. All right, so let's just do some broad looks at these various positions. Now the combine is over. You've had a lot of time to study. Let's just go 2023 quarterback class, feel it or fuck it, generally.
Feel it. I think it's a strong class. Feeling it to the point that I would recommend that you use at least the top 3 players to build a dynasty squad around. I usually say don't draft quarterbacks in dynasty. This year, I would make it a point to. And if you're in that nether region of no man's land of not being good enough to play in the playoffs with your fantasy team, but too good to have a top 5 pick, and you don't want to try and buy a top 5 pick, stockpile quarterbacks where you can and start with this year's class with one of them. And I think there's 3 that are perfectly good to build a team around, and I would be very happy with them.
Same drill, running back class.
I think it's a strong class overall. I think there's some really good talents there. The problem is that you're banking on trying to find some guys who are going to give you 5, 6, 7 years of really strong caliber starter talent. And I'm just not sure the league is that way anymore. You may find one, but you're throwing darts to do that. So generally speaking, it's a deep class. So I would say that, if you can collect backs in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th rounds, that's the way to go. Get a quarterback maybe near the top, or a tight end, which we'll talk about in a minute. And I think that and you can be selective about taking your shot on one of the top running backs, of course, too, if you have an early pick.
Wide receivers.
I think it's a weak class. It's not awful, but there are a lot of players. This is a minefield class where they're all in that range where, with the right fit and with the right attention to detail to develop, there's probably 15 to 20 of them that could emerge as fantasy contributors to your lineup, meaning mid-range to low-end starters or bye week options. 20 of them. We know that most likely, if there's 20 of them that could do that, there's probably 3 that are actually going to, and good luck picking who they are pre-draft. So I think overall it's not a terrible class, but it's definitely weaker than the past 2 to 3 years.
Based on the hype, I'm feeling the tight end class already, and I don't know a damn thing about it. How about you?
Yeah, I'm totally feeling this class. I think that there's a potential generational talent in this class. Well, I'm not going to use that term. Fuck that.
You just did.
Yeah.
Too late.
Fuck it.
Locked in.
No. All right. I'm hyped. But there's, actually there is. Because of the way he'll be used, I think there's a potential generational talent in this class. And there's about 4 to 6 other tight ends that I think could be good starters within a year or two. And there's maybe another 5 to 6 who might actually, give you fantasy value at some point during their careers and grow into that. So there's a lot of potential with this class and a lot of different types of players in terms of styles of tight ends who can be productive for fantasy. I'm feeling this class as well. Doesn't mean you're going to want to go. There's maybe one or two tight ends that you might want to pick in the first 15 picks, especially in a 1.5 PPR league. You might want to take at least one of them as a top 3, top 5 pick overall.
Kyle Pitts would like us to remember the landing spot matters a little bit. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. I did not really feel the NFL scouting combine. It's very exciting to watch them run around in small circles and
I don't watch it.
Lines.
I don't watch it. I never do. But I love getting the results. And
right. Yeah, it's data, right? Sometimes you need that additional data to kind of solidify what your views already are, or to kind of maybe make you look again and question a little more. No question. We'll be back next week. Matt Waldman, thank you very much. It's been a great day. Love you. Goodbye.
Love you. Bye.